I wasn't as embedded in technology that I have been, and I was coming at this where technology was not my main day-to-day focus, like most of your staffing leaders, I would feel it's like death by a thousand cuts.
Welcome to the Tech Savvy Recruiter, the podcast for recruitment and staffing agency owners keen to explore the tech innovations reshaping our industry. I'm Andrew Roger from recMate.
And I'm Belinda from Recruitment Garage, and together we're your hosts, bringing you a stellar lineup of tech experts ready to help you understand and, more importantly, benefit from the increasing array of tech available to you today. Welcome to this episode of the Tech Savvy Recruiter. Andrew and I are delighted to be joined by Rod Smyth, the CEO and co-founder of Glyde, which is an exciting new recruitment AI platform that expedites the recruiting process starting at the top of the funnel. And Rod is going to share a little bit more about Glyde later in this episode. A little bit more about Rod. He is a serial, emphasis on the serial, tech entrepreneur and thought leader, having founded Temp Buddy, which you've probably heard of, and also worked in recruitment, running his own agency called Shift Fillers. And in addition to this, Rod has been essentially immersed in recruitment and recruitment tech for many years. So we really, really look forward to hearing his insights today as we delve into his thoughts, mainly around AI and how we can best embrace all that encompasses. And we were just talking before the episode, and I can tell you this is going to be magnificent because Rod has one of those minds that just is very future-led, and I'm really, really excited to hear about what he has to say and where we are going. So welcome, Rod.
Thank you, Belinda. That is a very flattering opening. I really appreciate it. I hope
very welcome.
Live up to a fraction of that. It would be wonderful.
Anything else you'd like to add before we kick off?
I just to tout my own trumpet, I did. If we go back in time further, I was straight into one of the early days in the internet. I built my first business, which was a web development business, which I sold in 2000. And then I started a cloud-based SaaS recruitment ATS CRM. Certainly in the UK market, was the very first one in the UK, which was an interesting challenge because I had to pick a pricing of SaaS that didn't exist in the market at all in general, and to my knowledge, didn't exist anywhere in the planet for recruiting ITS CRM software. So that was a fun journey. So it does go back a few years, just to get a perspective on the length of time.
And how do you keep looking so young?
It's all AI. It's all AI.
It's all AI. All right. So let's kick off. I'd love you to share, Rod, how you see AI best used in recruitment currently, and how perhaps the kind of not so tech savvy recruitment agency owners should be thinking about this and where we're going with all of this.
Yeah, AI is a huge topic. And it has been so much of it has now come to the kind of this foreign consumer content and in news media around what's the GPT, the transformer model has brought to AI, and making it so easy and so accessible for everyone to just ask the AI a question and get a meaningful response from it. The majority of conversations I've heard across all areas are always around transactional. It's like, hey, what the AI can do this for me, can do this for me, this for me, this for me. And it's like a scattergun approach of I would call it, if I wasn't as embedded in technology that I have been, and I was coming at this where technology was not my main day-to-day focus, like most of your staffing leaders, I would feel it's like death by a thousand cuts. It's I can do this with AI, I can do that with AI, I can do this with AI, and the confusion has got to be incredible for people. And it is everyone trying to have their word and say, hey, this is my little piece, this is what I know how to do. And every single one of those conversations boil out, in my mind, to one single theme. What can AI do for me as an individual? Very few conversations talk about what can AI do for the industry, and what can AI do for the candidates, and what can AI do to solve the biggest challenges that face us, that we know that are in our face every day, but nobody's trying to tackle. And AI is the first time we really have a chance of tackling huge, huge challenges like the candidate black hole. How do you give every candidate a really great experience? Not just the ones that you're interested in. How do you change the entire funnel so that you're contingent recruiting is not a numbers game where you're allowing for enormous amounts of waste? How do you kind of think about those challenges? That's where AI really comes, in my mind, where it really comes in. And that's where the hardest parts of actually really getting to use and implement AI comes in. Because in order to get that type of AI working, even though the technology part is really simple, the domain knowledge on the recruitment process and recruitment business operations, every sequence in that process and how they fit together, there's a very small number of people in the world that actually understand that and the AI with sufficient level of depth to actually make the difference. And so that's where I get very excited about this journey that I'm on and why we've built Glyde to do what it does. And how we've done it, we haven't just thought about, oh, here's a point solution to do this piece. We've tried to take it back and say, how do we really change the entire top of funnel? And change what it does, and then when you look at changes there, what does that mean for the rest of your systems? What does it mean for the rest of your interactions, for your database content, the quality of relationships you have, and what does it mean for the future that you can do with your agency? Sorry, I'm going to pause because I can go on about this, as you can guess, for hours and hours and hours.
It's super interesting, but, and I get the theme of that too. It's very much and exactly the person that you described, a bit here and a bit there. That's me with AI, and I love the way that you take it up and think about we as an industry. What does that mean for everyone? What does that mean for the experience of the individual people? Which is that just makes a ton of sense to me. But I've never heard anyone articulate it that way. So that's a great place to start. Thank you.
Can I give you some just to make it real? For a moment, in terms of what I'm describing means. It starts on what happens when 100% of candidates get constructive feedback immediately within minutes on their application for a role as to how they fit that role and what skills that they have are relevant in that role. And then second to that, what happens when you get 55 to 70% of the candidates who apply for a role actually go forward and have a conversation to understand more, and for the agency, the hirers, to actually know more about the candidate's suitability for the role, not just what's on their resume, not just what's in the job description, but actually have a conversation that gathers meaningful and important information, context, motivation, where they live, what they want, where their career plans are, why it is that they feel they specifically want to do this job, and getting all that up front and doing that and giving that feedback to the candidate saying, hey, you probably won't get a call back on this occasion because these are the reasons you won't, and articulating why and giving that constructive feedback. And imagine doing all that in like less than 2 hours.
Yeah, and that's such a perennial problem in recruitment, isn't it? And there's so much money that gets lost by not doing that well.
Well, this is what happens. This is what the AI and Glyde does. It takes it from the applicant with 100% feedback, no more candidate black holes, all the way through to actual feedback to the candidate and a submission to the recruiter with a submission note. That actually on our test and our case studies show that a 50% acceptance by the hiring managers that when those are put forward. So the decision making and all of these elements, there's the balloons, that can be done and can be achieved. It's completely different to what anyone else would imagine. So thousands and thousands of applicants in minutes through a pipeline to target and fill your roles, qualified, they understand what they're going forward for, they're engaged, they satisfied the needs, they're given colour, they've got feedback on it, and they are then in the trade in a matter of hours, 24/7. That's game-changing and life-changing in recruiting. That's what's current.
That's brilliant. Love that. That's the
future. That's current.
It's amazing because I think we all want feedback. Whatever we're doing in life, right, is something you look for. If you play sport, you're looking to your coach for feedback. Am I doing it correctly? How can I improve? Even if I'm not hitting that home run, I would love to get the feedback so I could do a little bit better next time. And unfortunately, realistically, recruiters are in the rejection game if you look at the numbers. But we don't reject. We often ghost our candidates a lot of the time, unfortunately, just because of the sheer weight of volume. And I think the presence of this tool set that we've got available for us now really needs to be leveraged, and those that leverage it the fastest and quickest will be the ones that are leading the market.
Mm. I mean, the rejection and that idea that what we're doing is we're filtering out candidates. That's an idea that I abhor. I don't agree with it. I think it's the wrong approach. I think it leads to a lot of the waste that happens, because generally speaking, if you go through that process of gates and filtering people out, all that's happened is they've accidentally stumbled into being your final list. They never actually said they want to be there, really. They haven't actually actively consciously made a decision that's saying, I want to be on your final list for this job. They've just passed the hurdles and didn't that along the way that it could easily have been for anything. They just so there's a difference between opting in, consciously making a decision to move forward with the different areas, the parameters that are in the job, and just being qualified to do it. And what recruiters too often are looking for is just someone qualified to do it that they can put in front of the client, and then spend the time trying to convince the person to do it, take a job, or go do it, take an interview for a job they don't really want to do. And sometimes it's success, but generally speaking, the amount of effort that goes into that is it's staggering. So I think that there's, with enough information, the right candidate for the job will select themselves in, and if it's not the right job for them, they'll self-select themselves out.
And then taking that to another level, Rod, you've got that, you're saying that putting the right person in the right job. And, we've all had it where people end up in the job and they realise a couple of weeks in, the job's nothing like they thought it was. So if we can also bring that forward into their experience as well, so that when they are in that role, they're getting exactly what it says on the tin, all the better.
That's 100. I mean, it's less of an issue in the, when you're going through for a permanent hiring role, so you're going to get a role in, but it's a much bigger issue if you're in temporary labor and doing, if you've gone through that. I mean, many of us have seen or been part of, or they'll get railroaded into turning up on to do a job it could be a cold environment, packing boxes, whatever it is, but they turn up and say, I don't want to commute an hour a day to get here to do this. This is not what I really want to do. So, and they have, what everyone accepts as normal, like 50% no-show rates and things like that. So, well, of course they don't show up. They don't want to. They don't want to do the job in the first place.
Yeah.
So why would you, if you haven't really asked them or understood their motivation, why would you expect them to show up? And this is where AI brings in, and this is where the opportunity is to change that script.
Yeah, I love the whole opting in perspective, Rod. It makes so much more sense, doesn't it, to take people along that journey where they say yes more than to more questions around, is this the right perfect choice for me or not? And sometimes you might have technically the best person, but there's so many other factors that come into play when you're hiring somebody that just should really overshadow, can they do the job as a basic tick in the box, but are they the right person to do the job? Might be a completely different question altogether.
And commitment follow through. I mean, if I say, oh yes, I will turn up on time every day and I will do this 45-minute commute every day. If I say that in an interview, I'm more likely to do it when I get the chance. But at the other side, if you just ask me, hey, are you within 15 miles of this place? And I say yes, I haven't said I'm going to turn up every day. I haven't said I'm happy with that commute. I could be working 3 miles away and not happy with 15 miles. All I've just done is said yes to a direct question. I haven't said anything about my desire to turn up to work at 7 a.m. or whatever it might be. My desire to do that commute because it's convenient for me, because I'm actually going the same direction as my wife or partner or whatever else, and that's important quality time in the morning to spend on the journey. Could be anything, but there's a very big difference between asking me, am I 15 miles away, and asking me if I'm actually happy doing this every day.
Yeah,
massive difference in that question. Speaking of question, I was thinking about one just before we jumped on around misconceptions around AI, Rod, and because a lot of people have a framework of what AI might be, and then there's some press out there around what it is or what it could be doing to the world, et cetera, et cetera. Particularly with the world of recruitment, things like bias and those type of elements do seem to get a bit of coverage in blogs and posts and things like that around AI. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your experience on those misconceptions and maybe reframing people's mindsets around those areas?
Yeah, I'd love to. I might go through a sort of brief description of AI as we look at it because as we know very much the conversation that we're talking about when we talk AI in this last 24 months is really about the transformer model, the LLMs, the OpenAI, ChatGPT, and so on. And this is a very important step forward in the AI journey that began many, many years ago. But the most important parts of that AI journey are some of the components. So one of the first components was machine learning. It's how do we take a large data set and identify patterns in that, and from those patterns, then extrapolate what the next thing may be. So machine learning took lots and lots of data and then organized it. So lots and lots of, books, media, videos, whatever else. It was a way that we could actually get huge amounts of data that weren't all structured in the right boxes and things like that, unstructured data, put it into something and actually have it make sense. So, color reds were aligned to each other, color blues were aligned to each other. These things that were books and were on the same subject were actually closer together. And I like to describe this as that machine learning is sort of how do you put what's in your memory in your brain. It's the connections between the synapses. It's how do you say, okay, here's this neuron has a memory, but the synapses are the machine learning piece. So it's those connections. What we have, there's another side of things called vector storage and so on, which is effectively the storage of the same learning that we've got. So you have machine learning to create that knowledge, that memory in your brain that tells you how to move your arm up and down, tells you how to speak and everything else. And then you have later on the transformer model, which builds upon that. So it's the same method of really collecting all that data and assembling it. But then the transformer model, what it does is it allows you to control the context of how you want to access that information. So that is how we stay within a context. So instead of being we say hyper ADHD, where you've actually no control over where the path of a conversation will go, probably like most of the ones I have actually. You have a scenario where the transformer model actually creates context. So we are able to have a conversation around it in a topic and actually have a coherent conversation with an AI for this reason. And when you can start to have a coherent conversation with AI, then you start having an interface that humans can interact with. So these are the very important parts of the building blocks. We have this massive amount of data from the machine learning AI that now we can interact with because of the transformer model and actually get that data, utilize that data in ways that we wouldn't, that in the past required heavy programming to do. Now you're actually able to access that data through natural language, through the LLM and that transformer model. So they're the really important things. Now, that data itself inherently has a very small level of bias because it has been created. You think that where history is, the majority of men were in engineering, so and most of the engineering content has male connotations. However, the data that is so vast in there is, and if you go and interrogate AI for an opinion, it will have an opinion that has been proven to have certain kind of unknown biases, and they really don't know where they come from or how they arise, but they know those are there. However, when you roll it back and you look at how do we think about this without asking AI for its opinion, because that's not actually what we're here for. Let's ask AI to help us do something that we want to do at that scale. So what is at the core that I've just described? The AI is really good at two things. One is carrying on a conversation in a coherent manner within a context window. So I want to have a conversation with you about your experience, about your role, about these skills, and tell me your opinions, your experience, and I'm going to be the interviewer and have that conversation. Nothing in that is going to show or pull on any bias that there might be there, because all I'm doing is having a conversation. So immediately we're saying, you know what, this is great. This is not an area where the bias comes in. Now, if I was to go and say, hey, what's the best type of software engineer, and describe to me the profile of the best software engineer in the world, that'll give me a very different answer. But that's not what we kind of look at the AI for. So really understanding what you're going to look for the AI to do has a bearing on whether there's a risk in terms of bias risk. But I also think there's a very different conversation around bias that we should be having. Because I know that the AI, certainly in our use cases, the bias is far less than a human bias would be, and actually near non-existent in any of the interactions we see. However, what we should be thinking of is how do you start building bias into the AI for the candidate, not for the hiring manager, or not for the employer who's going to use that to self-serving ways. Let's do it to as the candidate. Let's imagine that the candidate has a bias, which everyone does. They have a political leaning to one way or another. They have a view on gender, on everything else. They have a view on all of these things. And we accept that every individual has the right to their own views, as long as they don't harm or hurt other people. Well, wouldn't it make much more sense if bias was allowed to develop for that individual in their AI, for their use that they then have in their interactions, so that it understands them as a person, understands their preferences, their needs. So when a job comes up in a left-wing organization, and if somebody's very right-wing, it's going to say, this job's not for you. You're going to go the other direction, and it'll go help guide them that way. It is a very different perspective, as long as it's done on behalf of the candidate or job seeker, as opposed to on behalf of the employer. And that's why I was saying that the bias connotation is a blanket one, saying, oh, there's bias in here or there's not bias in there. Actually, it's very important to contextualize who's benefiting or who's the one actually implementing that bias, and you bringing that bias to bear. Because if it's brought to bear for the actors who have the rights to personal preference, then it's a very different scenario to someone who's being prevented from work because of an employer's bias or previous other data that they have. So I'd throw that out there. It can be controversial.
It is. I think so too. And I think you've raised some really interesting points there, Rod. And one thing I was thinking the other day is that it's not the sole decision maker. Let's face it, AI, right? It's there to help us surface information as accurately as possible. But at the end of the day, if you've got a good recruitment process in place, us humans are the ultimate decision makers to put that person forward, or to, pass on this candidate, or to give them some feedback around X, Y, and Z that might help them for next time. I think you've got to balance that out. It's not like there's a black box, the candidates go in and then the successful one gets popped out the other end, and the recruiter unfortunately does have to do some work, right? So we're trying to obviously do some heavy lifting for recruiters using tech, but at the end of the day, there's an art and the science of recruitment that's, and hopefully we're the artist, and the science comes from the box.
Well, that's 100%. I mean, this is the great thing about AI, is it lets the individual, the candidate, share their preferences, share their experiences, share it, and showcase themselves the best way they possibly can. And we think of the AI as the assistant to the candidate, as opposed to the assistant to the recruiter, which may be an important distinction here in this. We were a candidate-centric organization, so that's the benefits we bring to the candidate also then have, as a result of that, the benefits to the recruiter and the hiring process. But in that, the AI is allowing for the showcasing of that candidate's skills, experience, and everything against the role that they're interested in, that they've been presented with. And then that is presented to the recruiter, so the recruiter can then make their assessment and saying, is this person the right kind of fit for this role? Is this person and from my conversations with the client, can I help them, guide them from where they are at the moment into that new role and that new path of the future? And the important part that I've always felt and the recruiter brings to this is they're the therapist, the support person that's helping somebody transition from one place to another, and helping them ease through that journey, because it's we know it's an extremely stressful journey. Changing jobs, death, getting married, these are the main stresses in life. So your recruiter is actually your therapist in that journey from from the starting point to the end point. And that only works if that recruiter has enough time that they can invest properly in that candidate. And that comes from actually having a smaller number of candidates that actually are really suited and want and desire that role. So the recruiter can spend the time properly assisting, coaching, providing the shoulder to cry on if it didn't go well, or giving the feedback to keep them motivated through the journey. And they're there to do that and bring the candidate through. At the same time, do the same with the client. So that really important skill that a recruiter has in helping people connect with each other has largely gets lost in the volume of admin tasks and CRM updates and ATS buttons and the volume coming at them all day of, oh, you got to do this, and there's more KPIs and more metrics, and the real thing is the humanity that they bring in is really critical. I was speaking to somebody earlier on, and they made a very simple, funny point. I was saying that there's too much emphasis on data entry in all these systems for recruiters, and he's like, yeah. And then you've got all these every agency has the best recruiters, and they never use the CRM, and they're always in their own spreadsheets. But the owners will never actually push them hard to do anything because they're afraid of losing this great recruiter. Does that not make the point valid? The best ones are not using the CRM to do everything in; they're doing it on their own. What does that mean about the process you're trying to push onto a recruiter?
It could be a little bit broken, couldn't it, Rod?
I think it's ego and control. There's a fear to let somebody and trust somebody to actually do the thing that they need to do and to be their best at it and to develop themselves into the best of it. And we look to say, I want to see X number of phone calls. I want to see you do this, because that gives us a feeling of control over that person. And if we control that person, we believe that we can mold them into something that we think is the right thing, the way to do things, the right way to do things. I don't think that's necessarily correct. It's like many things I don't think are correct. That's one of them. And it is funny that the evidence suggests that the best recruiters are not actually doing the same thing as everyone else.
It does. I mean, the three of us have been in the recruitment world for probably longer than we'd like to admit. And if you can cast your mind over every recruiter you've met, how many unicorns have you met that are great at admin and top billers?
Never.
I could probably count 2 or 3.
I don't think I can think of any.
Recruiters I've met.
I'm surprised you can even get that far.
Yeah, so I can visualize 2. One chap by the name of Chris. He would come in at 8:30 a.m. and leave on the dot at 5:30, but he would be the most productive person in the building, 100% on the database and top biller. But he's unique.
He's a unicorn.
I think you've
Android. He's an Android.
Yeah, Android. Yeah, he is. I think there might be something that he's been planted in here by some higher being, right? But I think you've nailed something. I have sort of thought about it before. Why are we trying to, keep
shoehorn
all these
them
top
in?
billers? Yeah, into a paddock, right? And often recruiters are herding their team into a paddock and they're teaching them how to do stuff, and you're not letting them run free. And I think we're at a stage where systems can really be that co-pilot, for want of a better word, to those wild brumbies out there of recruiters who are just machines on the sales front, but have been terrible on the admin front. Let's face it.
Yeah, well, you've got to think about how those real top billers, how much better they could even be with the right sort of, with Rod's talking about, with the right sort of use of the support, instead of shoehorning them into something that's just a construct for that business that they believe is going to get them further. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Tech Savvy Recruiter. If you'd like to stay up to date with the latest recruitment trends and insights, make sure that you remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And also, if you'd like to speak to Andrew about turning your tech stack into your secret weapon, or myself around creating an agency that delivers you more money, more meaning, and more freedom, we'd absolutely love to chat. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to seeing you next time.